Hey guys, Dark Skeleton here, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about gaming and how it's kind of evolved over time along with the rest of technology, and kind of where I see things going, but also where they've came from. Back in the 90s, you really needed a console if you wanted to play games. There were computers, though a lot of the games on computers had nothing on the consoles. You had the console exclusives. So there was kind of an investment, upfront investment, that you had to have in order to be a gamer, so to speak. But then the internet really started to kick off. You started to get cell phones, faster internet speeds. You could actually go online and play these flash games, and you could load them a lot faster once you had something like 128 kilobytes a second. So that was around the time that games started to really become, I'd say, somewhat popular. That would be around the Xbox, PS2, GameCube era. We started to get 3D graphics, and I started to notice that people who were probably more of the average kind of person, not necessarily like the geeks in middle school or something like that, but the typical guy would possibly be playing something like Grand Theft Auto or a sports game or something like that, and they'd be talking about it openly in the middle of school. And these were guys who were active too. They didn't just play sports video games and Grand Theft Auto, they also went out and did sports actively on teams and that kind of thing. And they weren't necessarily associated with the geeky crowds either. So as technology started to grow, I mean, you had people getting cell phones and people spending lots of time online. Then you have crazy things like YouTube and social media. And it's just gotten to the point now where it seems like it's one of those technologies that people just spend a lot of their time a day on. But among the younger generation, it just seems that just about everybody at least plays a little bit of games. And I mean, that's not such a bad thing. It just kind of shows where things are heading. Um, Drifting into the territory that television has, where you want to call people over if you're going to hang out at a house. There's a very good chance that it might not just be a football game. It might even be playing a video game, and possibly might even get to the point where it's watching an esport instead of a football game. Um, Something that I might personally have more interest in, just because I've never really found regular sports to be that interesting. And that might just be because video games have always been very highly stimulating, but now it's just gotten to the point where it's almost ridiculous with the amount of graphical fidelity that you get out of playing these big AAA games. Um, it's just, you can do so many crazy things that you can't do in real life. And I think that's kind of maybe driving things a little bit towards um, being indoors more. You can go and look at EPA articles or articles that quote the EPA. That we as Americans spend basically 90% of our time indoors. I'll find an article and put that in the comments or description section. Uh, but if you go outside in 2014 and you walk around the suburb for a couple hours, even like when it's not a school system where kids should be, or kids you would expect at least, to be outside walking around, not really so much the case. It really seems like if people are going to go outside, they're going to get in their vehicles and they're going to possibly drive to a place. They might be running errands, or they might be going out to the bar or a dance club. But we're almost always ingrained with all this crazy technology, and video games are a big part of that. You have video game conventions, just like you have anime conventions, and even those are often intertwined with each other, since you have video games based off of anime, and even some animation based off of video games. Um, but with the advent of esports, additionally, it seems to be really competing with physical sports, and I think we'll never eliminate it, but it might overtake it to the point where people actually watch esports more than they do physical sports. I mean, you have to keep in mind that um, leagues like the NFL are government subsidized, but these companies that are sponsoring their own esports are companies that are doing it out of their own pocket, and they're doing it successfully, making huge profits. And I think that's only going to go up as this younger generation. I watch coming up with games. They seem to be just more and more born into the whole idea that gaming is totally normal. It's something that people like to do for fun, and I mean, really, that's true. It used to have a negative stigma, but it was kind of unjustified. It just that kind of societal thing where it's, you're doing something that's slightly different, you must be weird. As things move forward with virtual reality and the other senses that they'll be able to integrate into these kind of systems, it makes you wonder how things are going to be. Are people actually going to want to spend their life and their time out in society at parks playing a sport or something like that, or are they just going to kind of want to drift towards logging into some crazy new MMO that engages other senses like sense of touch, sense of smell? I don't think it'll ever get to the point where people just decide that they're going to quit life, that there's actually nothing to be offered in the real world, and that they'd rather spend their time in a virtual world altogether. Some people might do that. Um, but technology has really just overtaken everything. And as things get to the point where we just enter ludicrous levels of technology that 20 years ago we couldn't have even thought of, um, it'll be kind of crazy to see, are video games actually going to be more interesting to people than real life? But with video games as a technology having become so prominent and so mainstream, it's got to make you wonder what's going to happen next. Will there actually be something that replaces video games as the next thing that's just so weird for people to do, but then over the course of a decade or two becomes super mainstream and super cool to do, or at least totally accepted and something that a lot of people spend their time on? Interesting to think about. I mean, the future can hold some crazy possibilities. But yeah, we'll have to see how things go going forward. Since I'm sure that decades from now, people are still going to be releasing all kinds of new games with even better graphics, possibly better than life graphics. Is that even possible, though? In a way. If you have any thoughts about what I said or what might be coming out in the future, maybe you could link me some articles if you feel like it, then feel free to let me know in the comments down below. And I'll be talking about gaming more, of course, going on, as I will other topics. So if you want to hear more about that kind of stuff, go ahead and subscribe, and I thank you all very much for watching.